Bosun, pipe him aboard.
Aye, aye, sir.
Fire, dress ship.
Very good, sir. Dress ship!
A Brief History of Man's Maritime Mastery. Chapter 14. The Cook, the Captain, and the Chronometer. Just over 6 feet tall, the figure stood resolutely on the quarterdeck of the bark Endeavour, his bushy brows furrowed in thought, while small, sharp brown eyes watched the coast of Plymouth, England, fade into the misty August horizon of 1768. This was James Cook, 40 years old and newly commissioned as a lieutenant in the Royal Navy, embarking on what would become a legendary chapter in the annals of Pacific exploration. Cook's orders from the Admiralty were clear, yet intriguing. He was to observe the transit of Venus across the sun on June 3rd, 1769, from the distant land of Tahiti, a mission critical to determining Earth's distance from the sun. But there was more. Hidden in secret papers, he was to search for the fabled southern continent, the mythical Terra Australis. His instructions were meticulous. He was to document everything: the nature of the soil, the resources of the land, the disposition, customs, and numbers of the indigenous peoples, and the strategic importance of any islands he might discover. This was not just another voyage of conquest or trade. This was an expedition devoted to the pursuit of knowledge, an endeavor that required a new kind of leader. Cook was precisely that: humane, intelligent, and methodical, a commander with unparalleled navigational skills. The Pacific, at this time, was a vast, largely uncharted expanse, occupying nearly a third of the world's surface. Its mysterious waters were wider than all the continents combined. On 18th century maps, much of the Pacific was blank, or worse, marked with misinformation. While Spanish sailors clung to the safety of the 13th parallel north to ensure they would reach the Marianas on their 80-day voyage to the Philippines, Cook was prepared to adventure into the unknown. Self-taught in mathematics and astronomy, this son of a Yorkshire farm laborer had already proven his mettle by charting the treacherous coasts of Newfoundland and sounding the St. Lawrence River. Yet, despite his navigational prowess, Cook's greatest concern was scurvy, a dreaded disease that had decimated the crews of countless long voyages. He understood that to survive the vast and remote Pacific, he would need to keep his crew healthy. At Madeira, he made an example of a marine and a sailor, sentencing them to drink 12 glasses of wine each as punishment for refusing to eat onions, which Cook insisted were essential for combating scurvy. Sailors of the time were accustomed to meager, unappetizing rations of salt pork and worm-eaten oatmeal, but the prospect of consuming 20 pounds of onions in a week was almost unbearable. They grumbled as the Endeavour rounded the stormy Cape Horn and ventured into the vast Pacific. No one could predict what culinary surprise their captain would serve next: sauerkraut, coconut milk, even island grasses he had personally cooked for them. But Cook's rigorous approach paid off. On April 13th, 1769, he reached the mysterious shores of Tahiti, beginning his exploration of the archipelago. He noted the proximity of the islands to one another and named them the Society Isles. His journals meticulously detailed the Tahitians, their intricate tattoos, burial rites, the music they played on nostril flutes, and the dances that seemed to shake the very air with whimsy. He recognized the significance of their breadfruit, foreseeing it as a potential food source for slaves in the West Indies. Before departing Tahiti, Cook planted watermelons, oranges, limes, and other seeds, gifts that would forever alter the economies of many Pacific islands. Poultry and pigs introduced to these lands became staples, reshaping the local way of life. But not all of Cook's encounters with the islanders were peaceful. 2 of his marines, captivated by the allure of Tahitian life, had deserted, seduced by the island's beauty and the devotion of Tahitian women. They fled into the mountains, dreaming of a life far from the rigors of naval discipline. But they were eventually caught, wrenched from the arms of their new wives, and dragged back to the stark reality of naval service. It was a bitter reminder that the paradise they had sought was not theirs to claim. James Cook, ever diligent, meticulously tracked the transit of Venus as ordered. But his journey was far from over. He ventured southward, his eyes set on the vast unknown, before steering westward into even more uncharted waters. After battling rough seas, the Endeavour finally raised land, New Zealand. Here, Cook encountered the fierce Maori, a people whose cannibalistic practices shocked him to the core. Yet, true to his principles, Cook remained committed to fair treatment. When one of his sailors was caught stealing from a Maori, Cook had him flogged. The sailor, still defiant, argued that it was no crime to plunder from an Indian. Cook's response was swift: 6 more lashes. His leadership was as firm as it was just. Despite these challenges, Cook found time to marvel at the natural world around him. He listened to the bird songs, which he likened to small bells, most exquisitely tuned. He sketched a massive natural arch, noted iron-rich sands, and calculated the value of timber and trees. Alongside his crew, he collected some 400 plant species unknown to England. New Zealand had been first sighted by the Dutch explorer Abel Tasman in 1642, who named it Staten Land. But it was Cook who truly charted its coastlines, cruising for 6.5 months and mapping the 2 main islands with meticulous care. The strait that divides them now bears his name, a lasting testament to his exhaustive exploration. With New Zealand mapped, Cook turned his sights westward, aiming to fill in the blank spaces of the map of Australia. With New Zealand mapped, Cook turned his sights westward, aiming to fill in the blank spaces on the map of Australia, then known as New Holland, as labeled by the Dutch. In April 1770, the Endeavour dropped anchor in a land teeming with kangaroos, dingoes, and what Cook described as naked white-streaked savages, armed with boomerangs, a weapon unlike any he had seen before. He named the anchorage Botany Bay, in honor of the great variety of new plant life found there. Just north of this bay, a city would eventually rise, Sydney. Continuing his journey northward, Cook named various landmarks: Port Jackson, Bustard Bay, and Cape Tribulation, where the Endeavour encountered the Great Barrier Reef in a most harrowing way. Though she drew only 13 feet of water fully loaded, the bluff-bowed Endeavour struck hard on the 1,200-mile-long coral reef. To lighten the ship, Cook ordered stores, ballast, and even 6 quarterdeck guns to be thrown overboard. But still, the Endeavour remained fast on the reef. Leaks worsened, and despite the crew's constant efforts at the pumps, the water continued to rise. Cook, ever resourceful, ordered the ship to be fothered, a technique used to stop a leak in a ship's hull by covering that leak with the sail containing rope fibers and other materials. Sometimes sailors would use chopped yarn, oakum, wool, or cotton between the sail and the ship's sides. These substances are sometimes sucked into the cracks to help stop leaks. His crew sewed oakum and wool into a sail, smeared it with dirt, and dragged it under the ship, covering the worst leaks. Within an hour, the ship was pumped free of water, and a single pump kept her afloat until Cook found suitable harbor for repairs. Once seaworthy again, the Endeavour navigated through the Torres Strait, first sailed by Luis Valles de Torres in 1606. After touching at New Guinea, the Endeavour made port at Batavia on Java. Up to this point, Cook had not lost a single man to sickness. But the Dutch colony proved deadly. Malaria and dysentery claimed the lives of 30 of his crew. Upon returning to England, Cook's triumph over scurvy was hailed as a monumental achievement. Promoted to the rank of commander, he embarked on another voyage in 1772, this time aboard the Resolution and the Adventure. His mission was to settle, once and for all, the question of whether a vast, inhabited southern continent existed. Among his companions on this journey were naturalists, astronomers, and a small but significant device, a sea-going clock, a copy of John Harrison's Chronometer. This was the chronometer's first extended voyage, and it proved invaluable to Cook. The chronometer always told him the precise time at the prime meridian which runs through Greenwich, England. By using his sextant and astronomical tables to calculate the local time, Cook could determine his longitude, or east-west position, a critical breakthrough in navigation. Until this point, mariners could only accurately calculate their latitude, or north-south position, but they had no reliable way to determine how far east or west they were. This inability had led to wide errors in navigation as seen in Columbus's voyages. For Cook, the chronometer became a trusty friend, a never-failing guide, that weathered the trials of sub-zero temperatures as his men entered polar waters. As they shivered eastward, inch-long icicles clung to their noses. They were encased in a frozen sleet as if in armor. The rigging was so encrusted with ice that human hands could scarcely grasp the ropes. Yet despite these brutal conditions, Cook's crew remained cheerfully and healthy, though Cook himself nearly succumbed to illness. The voyage proved that no large Antarctic landmass extended to any habitable latitudes. Cook demonstrated this by circumnavigating the globe while cruising in the southern waters, coming tantalizingly close to discovering the continent of Antarctica. But the voyage yielded many other fruits. Cook and his crew explored vast stretches of the Pacific Ocean, providing new and accurate maps for geographers, new species for naturalists, and new understandings of the diverse cultures they encountered. They had, in Cook's own words, furnished friends of mankind with insights into the various modifications of human nature. James Cook's achievements did not go unnoticed. The Royal Society, recognizing his monumental contributions to exploration and science, elected him a fellow and requested papers on his methods. For his pioneering work on preserving the health of his crew, they awarded him their prestigious gold medal. The Admiralty, too, showed its appreciation, promoting Cook to captain and offering him a comfortable shore assignment, a position that could have provided him with a stable income for the rest of his life. But fate had other plans for Cook. During a dinner with Lord Sandwich, the conversation turned to the need for a leader to undertake a new search for that elusive Northwest Passage, this time from the Pacific side. In a moment of impulsive resolve, Cook volunteered himself. The explorer within him was not ready to rest. On July 11th, 1776, Cook set sail from Plymouth once more, aboard the Resolution and Discovery, ready to face new challenges. The journey took him around Africa, through the familiar waters of New Zealand and Tahiti, then northward. As they ventured further, the explorers marked their second Christmas away from home by naming a tiny guano-covered island Christmas Island. Sailing onward, they arrived at a new and wondrous archipelago, which Cook named the Sandwich Islands in honor of his patron, Lord Sandwich. These islands would later be known as Hawaii. Continuing along coasts of what we now know as Oregon and Washington, Cook's ships put in at the cross-shaped Nootka Sound on Vancouver Island. Here they set up a crude observatory, and Cook meticulously documented the abundant wildlife, noting the rich furs of wolf, bear, deer, marten, fox, seal, ermine, and beaver. Little did he know, his observations would foreshadow the fur trade that would later flourish in British Columbia, driven by the powerful Northwest Company. The expedition pressed on to Alaska, exploring Prince William Sound and testing Cook Inlet as a potential route for the Northwest Passage. In the cold, rugged wilderness, Cook noted the volcanic activity of the Aleutian Islands and probed the Bering Sea, proving how narrow the strait is between Asia and North America. Despite these achievements, the elusive passage remained beyond reach. With winter approaching, Cook decided to return to the Sandwich Islands, but his final voyage would end in tragedy. On February 14, 1779, in the tranquil waters of the Kealakakuka Bay, Cook, England's greatest explorer, met a violent end in a clash with the indigenous peoples. His death marked the conclusion of a life that had reshaped the world's understanding of the Pacific. Cook's legacy is indelible. He put Australia and New Zealand firmly on the map, dispelled the myth of a great southern inhabitable continent, and discovered countless island oases in the Pacific. By conquering scurvy, he extended the cruising radius of future navigators, inspiring a new era of exploration. He also demonstrated the reliability of the chronometer, a tool that would revolutionize maritime navigation. Two of Cook's subordinates, George Vancouver and William Bligh, the captain of the fated Bounty, would carry this new instrument on voyages of their own, continuing the work of a man whose passion for discovery knew no bounds.